Good morning, everyone. My name is John Olczyk. I'm a distinguished analyst and fellow at ESG, and this is our 7th John and Candy show, 7 years in a row. But Candy, please introduce yourself.
Good morning, John. Thank you, John, and good morning, everyone. My name is Candy Alexander. I am the ISSA International President, and I've had the fantastic opportunity in working and partnering with John in performing these research studies that we've done. This is the 6th.
The 6th?
Last year we did one on technology, which was really revealing to some of the things and challenges we as professionals have in tech. And this year we're back at what our personal, professional challenges are.
That's right, and we'll be presenting today. These slides will be available from RSA. I'm not sure when, excuse me, but they'll be available. And then the report, The Life and Times of Cybersecurity Professionals, Volume 6, will be available sometime in the next few months. So I will go on. This is the disclaimer. I'm sure you've seen it before. Don't really have to say anything here. We hope that this presentation will help you with your career if you're a cybersecurity professional. If you're a cybersecurity manager, we hope it will help you learn about what your staff is thinking and maybe better manage your staff. And if you are a vendor, this will help you understand the mindset of your customers who have a very stressful job, which we'll see. So hopefully this will shed light on one of those areas, and we're happy to take questions at the end. Okay. The cybersecurity skill shortage is not a new topic. We've been, as I said, we've been studying it for 6 years, or this is our 6th study. And what you see here is at the bottom of the slide, 71% of organizations say they've been impacted by the cybersecurity skills shortage. And 54% say that the cybersecurity skills shortage has gotten worse over the last 2 years. Now, the cybersecurity skills shortage is sort of very personal, right? So we all know the number of jobs that are available, but the question is, how is it affecting you and how is it affecting your organization? And we'll talk about that. But we asked this, and by the way, this was a survey of ISSA members, 215 in this case, in this slide, but roughly in the 300 range. And so when we asked, what's the biggest factor contributing to the skills shortage in your organization, this is what we saw. So number one, my organization doesn't pay enough. Okay, so there's still a disconnect there. The HR department at my organization doesn't really understand the skills needed for cybersecurity. Big disconnect there. And then my organization doesn't do enough outreach to the cybersecurity community, like here. So Candy, what stands out to you?
All of it, actually. And the thing that is frustrating to me is that we have, as John mentioned, we've formally been doing this survey 6 times previous in the past 7 years. And prior to that, the way we started doing this presentation, this research, is John and I started talking about, is there really a skills shortage? What is going on to cause that skills shortage and so on and so forth. So I have to say it's been at least 10 years that we've been talking about this problem. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I'm sure you've heard that saying, the definition of insanity is doing it over and over and over, expecting a different result. So I offer to you, why are we trying to put solutions, the same solutions, to this problem for the past decade? That, to me, is insanity. So I hope through our presentation today, we're going to yet again offer some insights. And I think that we all, as professionals, we owe it to ourselves and to the profession to keep trying to solve this problem. And when you ask me what stands out the most in this, I think one of our biggest challenges is the HR department. I saw a lot of heads shaking and smiles when that one came up. I would also offer the business doesn't necessarily understand what our job is. So we, as professionals, owe it to ourselves and the business to help educate them as to what it is. Is it compliance? Yes. Is it, keeping the organization safe? Yes. But ultimately, in an all-around about way, it's about risk. And if we don't address it, how much it's going to hurt the organization. So I think there's a lot of educational opportunities in regards to HR and the business.
We ask this question every year: what is the impact of the cybersecurity skills shortage? And there's really nothing surprising here. Increasing workload on existing staff. Now remember, we've done this 6 times, and that always comes up number 1, so there's a cumulative effect here. New jobs remain open, and then one thing that we'll dwell on a little bit as we go through the presentation, 43% say there's a high burnout or attrition rate. So I'm sure, and I see some heads nodding now. So are you burnt out, Candy? Is there a lot of attrition where you work?
I've gone insane. I'm not just burnt out. I'm on the other end of the spectrum. And again, I think when we look at this, new security jobs remain open for weeks. So how can it be that we have those open, but yet as the president of ISSA International, I talked to a lot of our members individually, and they're all looking for new opportunities, or it was, especially recently with the RIFs, right? I know a few people that have been RIFed. And so how can that be? And I would offer and suggest that behind the data is the fact that businesses don't know what our job is, and or the HRIS systems that they use for scanning potential candidates, they've removed the human factor out of it. They're looking for those silly little buzzwords and keywords, and that's not really helping anybody, because anybody can cut and paste, those buzzwords into their cover letter or resume. So I think we need to bring back the humanity of it.
I love it. If you're managing a cybersecurity career, you want to understand where the biggest deficits are, because that's where the most jobs will be, where the most money will be. This is another one that we've looked at year after year, and what do you know? Year after year, the top 3 skill shortages are application security, cloud security, and security analytics and investigation. So very specialized skills, but this is where the jobs are, Candy. Now, Candy's got, there's not a physical soapbox here, but she said, I'm going to be on my soapbox on this one, so go ahead.
Buckle up, here we go. So when it comes to application security and cloud security, as we mentioned, the past 7 years that we've done this 6th annual survey, these were 1 and 2. 1 and 2, regardless, year after year, bouncing back and forth. But when you really think about it, why is that? It's because you look at application development, where are they developing the applications and where are they pushing them out to? The cloud. It's SaaS. We live in a SaaS world, right? So of course they're 1 and 2. But why are they still 1 and 2? Well, when we look at it, we're looking at it very systematically at the developers. Let's blame the poor schmucks that are doing the development. It's not just them, because when you look at it from the agile development or whatever development methodology you're using, it's not the developer that says what happens with the bug fixes, is it? The prioritization of what goes into those sprints happens where? Happens strategically with the product manager. So you know what, guys? Instead of blaming the poor fellows and girls that are doing the code, why don't we look at it as a holistic problem, and that would be the product manager. I can tell you I do a lot recently in the past few years with AppSec, right? And, you know, I, just like everybody else, come on, developers, you got to know how to do the code. Well, let me tell you this. I don't know if you've ever met a developer that isn't paternal over their piece of code. They do not want their piece of code to be the reason there's a vulnerability or a breach. It's like their children. It is their children. So believe me, they're on the same bus that we are, but the decisions as to what happens in each sprint is made at a higher level. So when I go and develop an application security program, I pull in the decision-making entities, the key stakeholders, the product manager, the CTO, perhaps the CIO, and the CISO. That's where we go and look at what are the known vulnerabilities in the code, and then we negotiate when they're going to be fixed and what sprint. So I hope that makes sense to you. And again, this is one of those things that is very simple for us to fix. And then hopefully next year or the year after, we won't see application security and cloud as 1 and 2. We'll see something new.
I doubt it, but let's hope. So there's a skill shortage. We know about it. We're asking our respondents here, is your organization doing enough? Is it taking the right actions to address the impact of the cybersecurity skills shortage? And look at the percentages of people who say no. So that, to me, I don't have a soapbox either, but that's alarming to me because this isn't new. And when I talk to CISOs, I say, you should think about the cybersecurity skills shortage in every decision you make because it will impact every decision you make. So Candy, why are so many people saying that their organization isn't doing the right things?
Because they don't know what the right thing is. I mean, to put it simply, right? They don't know. They don't know what our job is, and they don't know how to fix the problem because they don't know what the problem is. They don't fully understand that. And again, that's where we as professionals really need to educate and not, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, like over 30 years. And we used to be called the Department of No. We can't say no anymore. We have to work and educate because many years ago, I started working with engineers. And I don't know if any of you have ever tried to tell an engineer, no, you can't do that. You have to explain the reasoning behind, and that's where you come up with the risk conversation. This is why we're not going to do X, Y, and Z. And then they become the biggest champions. So I think, again, we're looking at it almost adversarial, where it's like us poor security people in the business. We need to break down those barriers and have those conversations.
Absolutely. So on the bottom of the slide, 88% of organizations find it difficult to recruit and hire professionals. So the point there is you can't hire your way out of this. And on the top, we're asking people's opinions. We're saying, well, what could your organization do to better address the cybersecurity skills shortage? So at first they said, my organization isn't doing that. So we said, okay, well, what could they do? Increase the compensation. Money is always part of any discussion, but let's look beyond that. What could they do? So provide incentives, like paying for certifications, participating in industry events as part of a compensation package, better educate HR and recruiters about the needs. And so I won't read any more, Candy, but I think this speaks to exactly what you just said, is that you're a CISO. Your job is to communicate and really champion the cybersecurity needs in the cybersecurity department at the same time that you are dealing with cyber risk and supporting the business, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think, as a CISO or in the management, job function of cyber. We have to, the old saying, manage up and manage down. So we have to educate both ways. But I think the really important thing as well is that, when you find organizations that will reinvest back into its people, those are the ones that are loyal, and they will stick around. So, when we say, manage up and down, educate the business leaders, if you will, but also make sure that you take care of your people. We're seeing this more and more and more, and we hear the words work-life balance, but we don't practice it, right? Because we're overworked, by the way, right? So how do we have our staff, our teams feel valued when we're asking them to work, 50, 60, whatever hours a week? There's ways to do that. Make them feel valued and appreciated for them to go above and beyond the effort there. So as well as, make sure they have time set aside to, sharpen their skills or mentor them yourself. To provide them that opportunity. And that's where the loyalty will come in leaps and bounds in return.
Well, hold those thoughts because we're going to talk about cybersecurity culture. And I think this is a build. Nope, sorry about that. So how would you rate the cybersecurity culture at your organization? So 301 respondents, and you can see the biggest percentage, 43% said, meh, it's average. 31% said advanced, so that's encouraging, but that's still less than a third. And then 27% said fair or poor. Candy, it's 2023. This is my, I think, 17th RSA out of the last 20 years, and some of them were pandemic related, why I wasn't here. Why is there still 27% of organizations saying fair or poor, and the biggest percentage saying average? Why is that?
So I'm going to turn this around. Surprise! I know I always do this to poor John. So that bars on the right hand, those are the realists. They understand what's going on and what's going down. And I would offer those that say that they're averaged or advanced, those are the Pollyannas. And the reason why I'm saying that is that if our cultures and our organizations are that good or average, then why are we talking about all this other stuff that we can't fill jobs, we're stressed out, we're overworked, we're understaffed, we don't have time to sharpen our skills? I don't understand what the indicators of what a good culture is then. Because a good culture to me would be that you get all the budget you want, or within reason. You're a realist. You're on the right-hand side of that chart, aren't you? But, I mean, a good culture, you would have business support. I've had, CFOs that I work for, Candy, you never ask for anything. We'll give you whatever you need. Keyword, need. So, I mean, that's a good culture. They understand inherently what's going on. If I need something, I get something. And so I don't understand, again, if this whole data we're looking at today is that we're stressed out, overworked, blah, 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 and we're still saying, you know what, we have a good culture. So I think we need to stop and realize just because we don't have a good culture doesn't mean it's our fault. It means, to me, we have a lot more work to do. We need to educate more, upwards and sidewards and downwards. We need to let people know what the investment is, what the necessary investments are. Training, tools, technology, support, leadership. The old saying, lead by example, there it is. So I would offer that we're a little confused on what the indicators of a good culture are.
Well, that's a great segue, Candy, for the next slide, is what could you do to improve your culture? And so really speaks to that integration of cybersecurity and the business. So 41% include cybersecurity early on in all future business plans, so we have a seat at the table. And when there's a new planning initiative, we're there to understand what the initiative is, associate that with risks, communicate those risks, develop the right security controls. Make managers more accountable for cybersecurity performance, and I know you have a comment on that. And then provide more and better security awareness training to non-technical employees. I now work for a public company. This is a little side note. The security awareness training that I had to go through, now obviously I know the area, it's a joke. There are like cartoony things that you have to go through. They ask you 5 questions at the end. If you get, you have to get 4 out of 5 right. If you get more than 1 wrong, so you get 2 wrong, you fail. And then they give you the same questions again. So is that training? I don't know. But I know you have a point on make managers more accountable. Should business managers be accountable for cybersecurity performance, Candy?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Not cybersecurity performance. That's our jobs. So let me give you a little story here. One of the times I was a FTE CISO, I'm trying to like educate the business leadership, right, and understand what their challenges are and all of that. So I had this brilliant idea, I thought at the time, brilliant, to go and meet with each of the business leaders on a quarterly basis. Sit down and have a chat. That part was good. But where I went wrong was I would say to them, so, what are your biggest concerns in regards to security? And I would always get the deer in the headlight look. And I never really understood that. And little naive Candy, back in, I forgot what year it was, early 2000s, didn't realize it's not their job to understand cybersecurity. You know, remember that Nexium commercial years ago? Do you want your doctor doing your job? Well, why are we expecting business leaders to intimately know cybersecurity? Why are we there? So, you know, the conversation shouldn't be, you know, what are your biggest concerns in regards to cyber? And by the way, you own the success of my program. The conversation should be, so tell me, what are your biggest goals this quarter? Or what is your, you know, plans for the next year? One of, you know, many organizations, retail, everybody's moving into the Chinese market. That's the biggest, largest consumer market in the world. So why would they need to know about the risks inherent in doing business in China? I mean, they may have heard that, you know, it's a different type of culture and all that, but they have no intimate understanding of the risks inherent in doing that from a technology perspective. So why would we expect them to do that? So that's where we have conversations like, what is it you're working on this year? Okay, well, you know, before you move forward with that strategy, let's talk. I even had, you know, put it more simply and probably more relatable to a lot of people, had a business, you know, director tell me, well, we're moving our help desk, we're outsourcing it. Great. We do health insurance. We might want to check with that call center to make sure that they can be compliant to HIPAA. And also, they collected credit cards and information and stuff like that. So let's throw PCI in there. Do I expect this director to understand that one of the checklists in his moving the help center out to an outsource you know, provider, that he should understand you need to comply with HIPAA, which how many controls or, you know, requirements are in HIPAA, and then there's PCI DSS? Of course not. So why are we expecting business managers to be more accountable for cybersecurity performance?
So I'm going to summarize what Candy said, because I'm from the Boston area. So Candy just had her Kennedy-esque moment. Ask not what the business can do for you. Ask what you can do for the business.
Oh, I'm going to use that. I love that. I'm going to quote you, John.
Well, I'm just quoting Kennedy. So
Great
we
team.
talked about kind of the burnout factor, the stress factor, and we'll get into that in the next few slides. So the question was, which of the following statements is most accurate? And 27% working as a cybersecurity professional is much more difficult today than it was 2 years ago. And 36% say working as a cybersecurity professional is somewhat more difficult than it was 2 years ago. And aside from what we're talking about now in terms of careers, this is a good one to communicate to a CISO in terms of the asymmetric nature of cybersecurity. Because the cyber criminals have a network, they're cooperating. Chances are they're not burning out. Chances are they're you know, blinged out in St. Petersburg or something. But our people are not only being asked to do more, they're burnt out. Things are getting more and more difficult. And no one can live or work in an environment where it's continuously getting more difficult to do your job. So what do you say to that, Candy?
Well, I think the past few years, we've seen an exponential increase, as we always say, year after year, of risks, right? The risk landscape has exploded with the pandemic, everybody moving. Oh, by the way, we're all working from home tomorrow, even though we've traditionally worked inside the office for years and years. That coupled with geopolitical tensions, and so on and so forth. So again, the risks are growing like crazy. There's lots of motivation for bad people to do bad things out there in the world. And by the way, we're still like a team of one or two. And so, you know, the old saying that the malicious threat actors only have to get it right once, and we have to all the time. So of course it's getting more difficult.
And of those who said it was getting more difficult, we asked them the logical follow-on question, why? And there's the workload increasing. Cybersecurity complexity and workload has increased. Cyber threats to my organizations have increased. And we're understaffed. We've got budget pressures. It goes on and on, Candy. The hits keep coming.
Thanks. I don't even know why anymore. Why do I do this? Because I love it, that's why. We love
Right.
the challenge.
And
But-
we'll get into that.
Yes.
There's a hardy mindset within the cybersecurity community.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that many of you can relate to this slide. And again, it goes back to what I just mentioned a moment ago. You know, the pandemic drove everybody remote. We have geopolitical tensions. We are doing less because we can't, you know, fill those positions that have been open for months and months and months. So, of course, it's become more and more difficult. So again, I won't dwell on this because I'm sure all of you can inherently understand this slide.
Okay, common, consistent theme you're seeing here, where we're really trying not to just get people belly aching to us, but we're trying to get them to think about what could improve the program. And so this is the suggestions, and by the way, the 300 respondents here, they ranged from junior people who are just starting their cybersecurity career to CISOs. Very, very wide range, and an international response too. So what could you do? Increase the training for cybersecurity and IT professionals, but we'll focus on cybersecurity. Strive to create a better cybersecurity culture, and that you need help if you're a CISO from the business, but you're the champion. And in fact, when CISOs leave their companies, which they often do, it's because they can't impact change in this area. Hire more staff, good luck, right? Good luck. And increase the cybersecurity budget. Well, Candy said you can get as much as you want, so.
That's if you have a good culture.
Okay, oh, if you have a good culture. But I'm gonna, just one thing on training. In times of economic uncertainty, that's often the first thing that's cut. That's number one. Number two, there's this stupid mindset in the industry that says, if I train my people, I'll spend the money to train them, and then they'll go elsewhere. But what our research says is if you don't train the people, they're more likely to go elsewhere. And if you do train them, what do you know? They're better prepared for the task at hand. So that, to me, is a critical one, Candy.
I agree. It's all about the investment. So, and it doesn't have to be investment as in monetary. It's even taking time to understand your team and their challenges, both professionally and personally, right? Understand what's going on in their life. Why are you late 3 times a week? What's going on? Can I help you? And not, why are you late 3 times a week? So there's a difference in the tone, and I think we need to realize, the old saying, right? Return on investment. Well, if you don't invest, you're not going to get a return.
All right, so we, every year that we do this, we try to think of some new questions. And the next couple of questions are new. This one might not be new, but the one after that is new, and don't leave the room because it's very good. At any time in your career, have you experienced a situation where you worked at an organization, in which the organization you worked for was knowingly ignoring security best practices and/or regulatory compliance requirements? So look at that. 58% say yes, at least once. So this is when there's a breach and the lawyers say don't disclose it. This is when there's a problem and the business people say, you know what, there's too much risk in us addressing that now. It's the end of the quarter, what have you. Candy, without disclosing any or throwing anyone under the bus, can you share a story like this?
Well, I think we all understand the biggest story of recent past about that. So yes, of course it's important to understand you need to follow standards and practices. But I think it's really important to understand why a business doesn't or may not. And that comes, from leadership. That means it comes from sitting at the big table, if you will, to understand why are we not, adhering to this policy, regulation, whatever. Because life is not black and white. Sometimes there's shades of uncertainty, gray, interpretation. So I think, again, that's where we, as the risk professionals, need to assist leadership, business leadership, to understand the what-ifs. What if we do comply with this? What's it going to mean to the business? Because, there's a lot, especially it resonates with small businesses. If I comply with every rule of, say, HIPAA at the dentist office or the doctor's office, they're going under. They can't spend their whole, budget on, complying with HIPAA. That's just not reasonable. So it comes down to, understanding why. And of course, if there's no good reason, then that's when there's, an issue to be concerned about.
Yeah, so this is, I set up this next question. If you're not familiar with Mudge, so Mudge is a guy who worked at the Loft back in the 1990s. The Loft was a kind of a hacking group in Boston. He testified before Congress about the risks of cybersecurity. It was kind of the first watershed moment of Congress really being educated on the risks here. Anyway, Mudge, last year, he was hired to work as a consultant at Twitter, and he found some problems, and he became a whistleblower. And he ended up testifying before Congress again about some of the security issues at Twitter. And so based on that, in a discussion between ESG and ISSA, we posed this question and used it in our survey this year. So if you were put into a situation where your organization or the organization you work for knowingly ignored security best practices and/or regulatory compliance requirements, despite warnings from the security team, would you be willing to act as a whistleblower? So almost half, 48% of those we surveyed said yes, and 33%, a third, said maybe. And I'm actually pretty happy about these results because this is a testament to the ethics of our profession. What did Elliot say in Mr. Robot?
I want to save the world.
I want to save the world. Because we do view it as a battle between good and evil. And sometimes, I'm not saying the organizations we work for are evil, but if they're knowingly placing people in danger, if they're knowingly placing our data in danger, security professionals will come to the fore and say something. So that, to me, that's encouraging. All right, so cybersecurity career satisfaction, and we may not get through all the slides. I apologize. Like I said, they'll be available on the RSA website. You can also just come up to us afterwards. I'm happy to email you them. So, how satisfied are you? 44% say that they're very satisfied, and maybe that just speaks again to the mission here. But 36% are somewhat satisfied, and on from there. And Candy, before I ask you to speak, what makes a job satisfying? Now, compensation is at the top, and that, again, that's a checkbox to me. Is like, I'm not going to work for 20% less than I could work elsewhere, unless, I have a mission. I like work in the public sector or something like that. But beyond that, what makes a job satisfying? Business management's commitment to strong cybersecurity. So I want to work at a place where they take what I do and they appreciate it. They support it. The ability to work with highly skilled and talented cybersecurity staff. I want to learn. This is, and Candy and I always say, cybersecurity profession is like being a physician in that when you're a physician, you always have to understand what the latest research is, what the latest treatments are, what the data is telling you, and it's the same with cybersecurity. And then 36%, the organization provides support and financial incentives, enabling the cybersecurity staff to advance their career. So they're paying for certifications, they're sending you to RSA. They are investing in you. So Candy, are you satisfied?
When I look at this, yes.
Just in general.
Yes. I am a very happy girl. I'm very passionate about what we do, and I think that's why we all do what we're doing, right? So yeah, I think these are all really good indicators of job satisfaction.
Yes. Now, on the flip side, and we've kind of talked about this, so we don't really have to go into much detail, but how stressful is your job? And I'll just go to the highlight. 55% say that it's at least stressful half the time. So now you kind of sign up for this when you get into cybersecurity, but stress management is important, and also the recognition from the top that people may be stressed. You have to pay attention to that.
Absolutely.
What is the most stressful aspect of a cybersecurity career? So there's a pattern here too, overwhelming workload. So the skills shortage causes this, or is a cause of this, leads to stress. Working with disinterested business managers. So this is the flip side of the strong culture. Business managers, you're the department of no. That'll make you feel good, right, on a Monday morning when you punch in, if you do punch in. Finding out about IT initiatives after the fact. So this is the throw it over the wall. Oh, by the way, security, we'll have this application in production next week. You need to put a firewall in front of it. So what do you think, Candy? Is that your list of most stressful aspects?
Pretty much. And, we talk about the disinterested business managers. I think that's something that we should point out here. That the reason why they're disinterested is because we're talking security geekies to them. They don't get it. We need to break it down and make it relatable. And, one of the things that I really try to focus on in having conversations with business managers is putting it into analogies of their world, right? So if you're talking to a CFO, you put it into relation to something that they understand. Or if you're, an even easier way to do that is do the mom factor. And this is something I learned many, many, many years ago. If you can explain something to your mother, no, and by the way, Kaylin, my daughter's in the audience, but it's really important to put it in terms that a layperson can understand. So, have conversations with your family to try and explain world events and cyber. That's a really good, methodology of sharpening your skills to do that interpretation of complex security to layperson's terms. Because, as they say, when you're writing something, you're supposed to write to the 8th grade level to make sure that everybody can understand and comprehend what you're talking about, because that's the communication skill. Then we have to do that when we're trying to explain security as well.
So I'm told by Michelle, our room attendant, and Michelle came all the way from Syracuse University to be here with us. So.
Woohoo!
So I'm told that we have like 10 minutes left. So if you do have a question, go up to the mics and we'll answer it. Oh, we do? Right away. Okay. And like I said, there's more data here. I kind of anticipated we wouldn't get through all the slides, but we'll make them available. So go ahead, sir.
Sorry, my name is Tim Tang with Hughes. This question actually comes from listening to you yesterday and today. I was really interested in understanding, with all the changes that are taking place in cybersecurity, the AI impact and the like, how do you see the skill set of the cyber professional evolving over the next few years? What are the new things that they need to be able to do that they're not necessarily doing right now?
We need to watch technology because that's what we're trying to protect. So, I used to say when we presented about this, right, that technology moves at the speed of sound, and we as cyber professionals have to move at the speed of light in order to stay in front of it. So pay attention to technology news and trends, learn it inherently, like, laser beam focused, and think about it from the security methodologies perspective. What bad can be done? How can it be used in malicious ways? How can it be used in good ways? And from there, we're going to, move forward. But the other thing, too, is I hear from a lot of professionals is like, I'm drinking from a fire hose every day. I can't learn about everything there is to in cyber. So don't. Focus on what your passion is, and that's going to naturally drive you to your specialty.
Hi, thank you for your speech. I'm with Juniper Networks, and so I am a practitioner as well as a manager. One of the things that we do at Juniper is we bring in interns, and these are high school interns from underprivileged school. So many of the kids come from very poor backgrounds, like mom's runs Goodwill and the dad's a gardener, right? So I take these kids, I supervise 5 of them, and you know how we have to have in security good hygiene? There's a lot of work in hygiene. Network scrubbing, right? Firewall scrubbing, server scrubbing. I make those kids scrub, and in the meantime, I teach them exactly what they need to know to move them up into a different career path than what their family heritage is. So that was just one idea. The other thing is I own a nonprofit on top of Juniper, and I'm developing a cyber well-being program that Senator Cortese is working to implement into actually the school system. So, because I believe that K-12 education needs to adapt to the world that we live in, and there's no education right now for them. So I'm working really hard to adapt that along with my behavioral health modules that I've built already over the past 11 years. So that's 2 things, food for thought for how we can help fix this gap. And last but not least, I wanted to ask you guys about the impact that you foresee with ChatGPT. So, good and bad and ugly, because it could get really ugly but there could be some benefit to it. But like for us, we're like, do not go to ChatGPT and ask how you write code, right?
Right.
So that's all.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for all you're doing for our next generations, and that's why I was so excited to meet Michelle from Syracuse University, yoo-hoo! And she's here, by the way, because she said, I took a risk. And so she's put her own bill to come out here and volunteer so she could get a free pass. So kudos to you, Michelle, and good girl.
That's all.
And again, ISSA, just a moment on that, ISSA actually has a new initiative called AIM, and that's for apprenticeship, intern, and mentorship. So I hope that all of you have heard what this young lady has said and or get involved in community efforts, because that's the way we're going to help make our jobs easier. So there's that. And I'm sorry, what was the other part of your question? Oh, ChatGPT.
ChatGPT, yeah.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding
Yeah.
me? So if it isn't the drinking word of this week, it should be. And whether you drink water or whatever your beverage of choice, I think we're all going to be waterlogged before we leave. ChatGPT, there, just like every other person that says this in technology, we need to be very careful moving forward with that. I agree. I talked with Jim Rivas yesterday morning. They put out a paper, so Cloud Security Alliance, take a peek at that. I think we need to understand and put boundaries in, or guardrails, or standards, because it's not just a security issue, it's ethics, morals,
Yes.
and everything else.
Yes.
So I hope that we, as a community and society and technology, take our time to understand it. I think it's some good in it, but there's also a really lot of bad.
Yeah.
So.
I agree.
Yeah, and I agree with Kenny, so thank you for what you're doing. Please give me your card at the end.
Of course.
So at this point, I'd say ChatGPT, I mean, there's the kind of commodity things that we know about, like phishing email campaigns and kind of testing malware variants and things like that that we're hearing about on the adversary side. But right now, I like what's happening with things like Copilot. It's funny, I met with IBM yesterday, and IBM was talking about this with Watson like 5 years ago, and maybe they charged too much or something, but no one really paid attention. And so the opportunities to address the skills shortage by automating some things, by using AI to do things like comb the threat intelligence and give us better indicator or more accurate indicators. I'm bullish on that. It's hyped right now. Everyone's talking about it, as Candy said. But I'd say let's embrace the good things, but keep our eyes open for some of the malicious activity.
Thanks.
Okay. I didn't know whether you were leaving or you had a question, but go ahead.
Hi, I'm Derek Stroud. I work for an energy company in Europe. Two questions. The numbers you gave, are they US numbers or global numbers?
They're global.
They're global.
I'd say the majority of respondents were from North America, but we do have global representation.
Okay. And then the second question, I relate to a lot of the problems with HR that you are talking about. And on the salary or performance pay, when we talk to HR and say that we are too low, they give us kind of average number and say, yeah, we are within the average. But then we say, but we want a super skilled cyber defense center, not an average one. And there we don't get any numbers. So how do you get that? Or can you get that?
I don't think you can, to be
No.
quite honest, because it goes back to the challenge of not really understanding what our jobs are. And so oftentimes, right or wrong, they lump us into the IT, right? Job profile or whatever. So I think, to be quite honest, we need to do a complete overhaul of HR and our relationships with them, and that includes pay and compensation. So the companies that really get it, they don't have a problem hiring people because they get it.
Yeah, and I'll just, and I know we have to end right now, but, and thank you all for attending. I'll say this, is that look at the qualitative, or look for qualitative results, not just the quantitative data, because the quantitative data is going to look at means and averages. But if, and I'll give a shout out to ISSA, if you get involved with a professional organization and you you speak to people, they're going to tell you, they may not tell you what they make, but they'll give you a range, and they'll have networked with their peers. And so then you can get a better idea of what a highly skilled individual gets as opposed to an average person. So the more you talk to people, I'd say the better equipped you are for that. That's about all I can add. But
Makes sense.
thanks again
Thank
for
you.
everyone attending. Like I said, the slides will be available. Let us know what you need. Thank you.